So glad to be here. My name is Mark Herbison. I run an organization called HTL Advantage, and it simply stands for Haywood, Tipton, and Lauderdale Counties. I don't know why they named it HTL Advantage. I think it's the worst name in the world, but I have to have a little map on the back of my card so I can explain what the title of my organization is. But it was formed back around 2009, around the time when the Megasite was being developed. And at that time, I was with the Memphis Chamber of Commerce. I managed their economic development department for nearly 14 years. Kyle Spurgeon has been in West Tennessee most of his career, except for some time that he was in the Nashville area. So we've been involved with the site from the very beginning. It really goes back, and y'all have the low country here and the upstate. We have the three grand divisions in Tennessee. So we've got East Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, and West Tennessee, and they really are like three individual states. And so during the time back around 2005 and 6, there was a lot going on in Tennessee. They had landed the Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga. They had landed Walker Semiconductor in Cleveland. They had landed the huge Hemlock Semiconductor plant in Clarksville, where Chavez was before he left Tennessee. And by the way, he's still a beloved figure in Tennessee. I know a lot of stories on James, but we'll talk about those later. So the idea back then was to develop a site in West Tennessee, Haywood County, one of the counties that I represent. Their county mayor and some of their officials had come together and had the idea of putting together a mega site. So they got the first round of options in the early 2000s. The second round of payments of $1,800,000 came up, and they couldn't pay for it. So they convinced their state representatives and legislators to go to the governor. At that time, a guy named Phil Bredesen was our governor, and that was back around 2008 and 9. So they paid that second round of options. They bought the site in 2010, and then the rest is kind of history, as they say. Just to give you a little geographic understanding of where we are, the Megasite is really halfway in between the two largest cities in West Tennessee, Jackson and Memphis. Memphis is an MSA of about 1.3 million people. The Jackson MSA is about 130,000 people in that area. So we lie right in between that. Really great infrastructure, a huge industrial site. Almost 6 square miles are contained within the site. The distance between the rail connection and the eastern portion of the site is about 6 miles long. So the site was always conceived going back to the early 2000s as a car plant site, as a plant for some sort of big automotive OEM type of assembly plant. Kyle worked back in that time frame to hire a guy named Buzz Canup, a big automotive consultant, to come in and help identify the property. My team and a guy named Paul Latour, who some of you may know over in Middle Tennessee in Rutherford County in Murfreesboro, where Nissan is. He was at the Jackson Chamber then, and we went through the first certification with McCallum Sweeney back in 2006. But we've got really great infrastructure in the region. Going back to when the site was very first conceived, the state actually ended up buying the site. So this is the first, and I'm sure it will be the only site that the state has ever owned and developed in their history. So they had planned for all the infrastructure. They built a little bit of the infrastructure. Going back to 2012, there was a plan to build a sewer line all the way to Brownsville, which is the county seat of Haywood County, about 13 miles away, expand their treatment plant. The state bought that easement, bought the pipe, spent $22 million, and then it came out that they were going to pump the affluent from that plant in the Hatchie River. And the Hatchie River is the last scenic river in Tennessee and one of the last unchannelized, untouched natural river basins in the country. And so the environmentalists went crazy. The state, a lot of issues came up. They had a lot of people complaining about it, and so they walked away from that. And it took several years to around 2013 or 14 when at that time the commissioner was a guy named Bill Haggerty, who's now our U.S. Senator. He left the commissioner's role, and a new guy named Randy Boyd, who's now the president of the University of Tennessee, was our commissioner. He came in and they conceived a plan to really bypass the local governments and build a sewer plant that would go all the way to the Mississippi River 36 miles away. And so that process took years. We had to buy property easements from 240 property owners over a 2-county area. We had to get permits from the Corps of Engineers for the Mississippi River. So we got all that work done. I left the Memphis Chamber and then took this job in the summer of 2019. And that was right around the time when all this was wrapping up. The permits are done, the easements are bought, no lawsuits, everybody's happy. We're going to build this sewer plant, and we're going to have this incredible, viable automotive site. Well, in January or February of 2020, our new governor announced that he was going to put all this on hold, that they were going to wait, try to get a tenant, and then maybe build this infrastructure. And so they canceled, they put that project on hold. But the good thing about this, we had everything in place, all the easements, all the permits for everything, the electricity, the water, the gas. And so in February of 2021, Ford came looking, and they were looking at multiple states. They said 14 different states. And so about April or May of 2021, the governor announced that we were going to move forward with the sewer project. So this is the 36-mile easement to the Mississippi River. It goes across 2 counties. Both of the counties that I represent the 3 counties just north of Memphis. So that is under construction now. That project let in October of last year. They'll finish that late next year. They're getting ready to start construction of the sewer plant. They're bringing up a huge amount of gas from the south from A&R Pipeline. TVA, which is our great partner for electricity, just like y'all have your utilities in South Carolina Power Team. We're partners with TVA and our local power companies. They're bringing in a tremendous amount of power, 50-acre substation, huge investments for them, and we're building a water processing facility on site for the plant and all the subsidiaries that will come. We're also getting a new interchange off the interstate. This was when we were negotiating the project early on. This was really the first issue that came up, and I was pretty amazed. I thought this is maybe where this thing goes south and we get cut, because I've never seen, an interchange built this quickly. It usually takes 6 to 10 years to get an interchange built. But what the state had agreed to was to build them a new interchange by the time they open this plant in January of 2025. They're fast tracking it. They've done 4 projects under this new fast track process that they have at TDOT. One of the projects was in Memphis, where they replaced 3 bridges that went over I-240 in East Memphis, like 6 lanes on each side of the interstate. They replaced 3 bridges in 5 weekends, where they literally built the bridges on the side of the road, shut the interstate down on the weekend, installed the bridges, and opened the interstates back up. So we're getting that. We're getting a whole new interior road system coming into the site. So those lines right there are the convergence of 3 counties. So that's Tipton, Fayette, and Haywood counties. So we'll get a new divided highway up to a new interchange, another new divided highway over to Highway 222, which was upgraded for the project several years ago. And then we'll get new connector roads up to some of the internal state highways. What they loved was the site and the area, the region. We've got great infrastructure in the Memphis region. They loved the site. They wanted to go back to the older concept that they used when Henry Ford built the River Rouge facility in Michigan back in the 20s. It was the largest industrial facility in the country at the time. They built every component for the Model T there, and that was Bill Ford's vision, to get a lot of the heavier components on site, in a really big place where they could expand over time, as they went looking down the future. But if you look at our regions, we're one of the only areas in the country with 5 Class 1 railroads, 9 rail yards, 5 intermodal rail yards. We've got the greatest overnight shipping hub in the world. We've got the FedEx World Hub in Memphis. We've got the busiest air cargo airport in the world, the Memphis International Airport. We've got a huge UPS hub, all kinds of Amazon facilities, 2 huge Mississippi River ports, and an incredible road network. We also sold incredible quality of life. Our cost of living is really some of the lowest in the country, incredible low cost of housing in our region. You can really be, we call it a 20-minute town living in Memphis. You can be downtown watching the Grizzlies, and in 20 or 30 minutes you can be in a much more rural location for your lifestyle and your family and the place that you live. One of the key things for us was workforce analysis. So I took this job in the summer of 2019, and we really did not have that. We had sold local workforce, which had not worked very well. And so we went to a much more regional concept. We hired Vision First Advisors, and most of you know Gray Swope. Some of you have worked for Gray Swope. Many of us have competed with Gray Swope in his role as the Commissioner of Economic Development in Mississippi and in Florida. But his team came in and did an initial analysis for us in late 2019 to look at our three-county area, because I knew that we didn't have a workforce problem, we had a jobs problem. All of our people in my three counties were leaving to go to bigger towns like Memphis and Jackson to work every day. So we did more of a drive time analysis of our region. We looked at 9 counties. That came back and proved out what we already knew, that we were in a very large urban labor shed, that we were competing, with the same companies that were going to Memphis, same labor pool, the same companies that were going to DeSoto County, Mississippi, which is the fastest growing county in Mississippi, one of the fastest growing counties in the country historically over the last 20 or 30 years. And then when we finished that one in early 2020, we commissioned a much more in-depth Megasite specific study, and we only looked at automotive because we wanted a car plant. We kept getting other types of projects brought to us, but we wanted a car plant. And so Gray did another study for a big chunk of money, and we just looked at automotive. We did a 45-minute and a 90-minute drive time analysis. We showed that we had 1 million people, 960,000 people within a 45-minute drive of the site. We looked only at automotive occupations, but within that 45-minute drive time, we already had 186,000 people that were trained to work in an automobile plant. We had 187,000 people that were already trained to work in a battery assembly plant. We had, this is in the summer of 2020, during the height of the pandemic, we had nearly 11,000 people that could work in a car plant that were unemployed during that period of time. And the really cool thing is we did this really in-depth granular analysis of 4 different regions, ours, Tupelo, Tuscaloosa, and Chattanooga. And we looked at all the different occupation sets. That went on for several pages. And what we found is in those drive times, we were as good, if not better, than these other areas that had landed car plants in the last 15 or 20 years, had been able to support those car plants and had thrived because of those car plants. And so we were able to use this. It was really a godsend for us when Ford came calling. We had the Vision First people on the ground with us when Ford and SK were on the ground with us in Memphis and in Jackson. And really this was a key component of our ability. We talked about our commuters. I've got 72.5% of my workforce historically agricultural areas that were old railroad towns. That all went away. The agricultural has changed significantly. And so most of the people were driving out to work. And then really I think the key for us was selling our workforce. We've really done an incredible job in Tennessee of moving back to vocational training. We are pumping tons of money in not only just vocational training, but in general into education and training in Tennessee. We just added we're adding a new $40 million Tennessee College of Applied Technology on the Megasite specifically for Ford. The governor put another $80 million in additional resources for TCATs last year just to increase their capacity. And he dedicated $1 billion in new recurring monies to just the education fund in general for Tennessee. And a lot of that is focused on dual enrollment, CTE, all that sort of stuff that, really we've got kids now that if they elect in the 8th grade, if they can decide they want to work in this car plant, they can graduate high school with the credentials needed to go to work immediately in the car plant, no college debt, and can really make a fantastic living. So today we've got the Megasite. Everything west of Highway 222 is going to be Blue Oval City. It's going to be one of the largest industrial projects. It is the largest industrial project in the state of Tennessee's history. It is the largest project that Ford Motor Company has ever done in their history. They're going to build a huge facility on that site. We have a 500-acre out parcel to the east that has been under option for about a year, being looked at by another company doing due diligence, and we should know in the next couple of months whether that will land or not. But this is what they're going to build. Phase 1 is going to be somewhere 12 to 15 million square feet. They're going to build a huge assembly plant. They're going to bring in chassis from rail. They're going to take them through that assembly process, paint, body. Then they'll come down to the south. They'll go through the battery plant. The battery plant alone will be maybe the largest, we think, industrial building in the state's history. It's around 4 million feet, it'll be 90 feet tall. They're permitting and grading the site for doubling the size of this within 10 years. And then down at the very bottom near the interstate, they're going to build a big cathode facility. They're going to have a huge office component, 150,000 feet. They're going to have a fitness center that's huge. They're going to have a modeling center. So they truly are going to build an industrial city in what was a real rural agricultural area. I mean, this is about 12 miles from Shelby County, which is the largest county where Memphis is, with 1 million people, and about, I don't know, 30 miles from Jackson, which is about 100,000+ people, but the site itself is in a real rural location. So we're very excited about it. They're breaking ground this week. Walbridge has come in and they've deployed their troops. They were working on the Toyota Mazda project in Huntsville, but they've come in like, you know, during World War II, and they've come in and they're marshaling their brigades and getting ready to deploy this week. But the commitments that were made were 5,800 new jobs by SK and Ford by the end of 2025. That has a big multiplier effect, as you economic development and utility people know. Car plant is a great multiplier effect. They're going to invest $5.6 billion in capital into this project, which will probably be more now because of inflation in the supply chain. But that's going to reverberate throughout Tennessee because we've got over 1,000 automotive supply companies in the state. And so many already supply Ford, and we'll talk more about some of the others in a minute. This is going to be their most eco-friendly facility in the world. They're going to utilize solar, their geothermal, gas-fired turbines. They're going to recycle water. It's going to be a really unique place, and they're going to use it as their kind of showplace model facility for the world when it comes to sustainability. So with that, I'm hoping this is going to go boom. Yep.
This is all about Ford leading our whole industry into the future. For most of the last 100 years, it hasn't changed a lot. There have been a series of evolutions, but very few revolutions. This changes everything now.
These investments are commitments to our next generation. It demonstrates to them that not only can we continue to deliver on our promise of the freedom of movement, but that we can do it and care for the planet at the same time. Battery recycling helps in many ways. It utilizes batteries that are in people's junk drawers in addition to vehicles that are expiring. It will also help us work down the cost as we strive to make these vehicles more affordable for everyone.
We've really taken advantage of having a clean sheet of paper to deliver the most modern and advanced assembly plant ever in our history. We're taking advantage of our Blue Oval Intelligence technology stack to connect the vehicle not only to the manufacturing process and all of the tooling and equipment, but also to the workforce.
But our investment doesn't stop in Tennessee. In Kentucky, we're building 2 co-located battery plants in partnership with SK Innovation.
Ford is opening a new chapter in automobile history with its new lineup of electric vehicles. Global SK will embody the spirit of collaboration. We are very proud to be partnering with Ford at this exciting juncture and to be taking this giant leap to bring about our common vision for a cleaner planet.
There's even more to the story. We're investing right across the country, expanding capacity for the F-150 Lightning in Michigan, and beginning in Texas, we're rolling out high-tech job training for the next generation of American auto technicians. This is an investment in the future of Ford Motor Company and American manufacturing.
We have an opportunity to make our customers' lives better and to also make the world better.
This is what it means to be built for America.
We're very excited in Tennessee about this. Trying to click to the next one. There you go. But we've got so much going on in Tennessee. You know, we're now only the second state in the country that has 4 different assembly plants with 4 different automotive companies. So every company's already making electric vehicles in Tennessee, but that's going to ramp up significantly. They're building a $2 billion Ultium battery plant in Middle Tennessee for GM right now, and then this huge project for SK and Ford in West Tennessee. So that whole I-40 corridor coming over to South Carolina, all the way even down into Mississippi and Texas, is really going to be as strong a corridor as the I-75 and 65 corridors are. But we've had $12 billion in new investment since 2017. 20,000 people employed in the EV industry, and we're already the #1 state in the country in the Southeast for EV manufacturing. So with that, I think we're going to do questions after this. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Well, good morning, everybody. This is on. Good. Good morning, everybody. Greetings from North Carolina. We had our North Carolina Economic Development Association meeting there Monday and Tuesday of this week. So I kind of feel like I've been on this circuit all week, but it's wonderful to be back and see people face to face. So thank you, James, for having me. Thank you all for sticking around to listen to me this morning. How many people's brackets are busted already? All right, how many people picked Kentucky to win it all? You got one. How many people picked Duke to win it all? 0. Good, very smart people. I would have said, hey, I love you. As a Duke graduate, I love you, but they ain't going to win it this year. It's not going to happen. It is my pleasure to be able to present on the Greensboro-Randolph Megasite. I'm sorry if this brings up some bad memories for some folks, because I know we've competed on a number of projects. But I will also say thank you to all of you all in South Carolina, because you're the reason why we have this site to begin with. Y'all been kicking our butts. You're so good and been kicking our butts for so long that we had to come up with something like this in order to compete. If you'll see up here, I entitled this presentation, Good Things Come to Those Who Wait. Cross that out. Prepare. Preparation, preparation, preparation. A story of commitment, loss, and finally a big win. I guess I'm just going to press this green button and make sure and see if things are coming. I know there's a lot on this slide. The other thing I will apologize for is this presentation was made by me. This is the first time I presented on this. My marketing team had nothing to do with it, so don't go back and say, hey, that Greensboro marketing team is terrible. A 52-year-old with very limited PowerPoint skills made this. But this is just so that I don't go off and talk for an hour, because my mother always said I could talk 30 minutes to a wrong number. And I don't want that to happen this morning. She can, by the way, speak an hour and a half to a wrong number. So I learned from the best. The vision for this site happened in 2013. It's humbling to get up here and look at Toyota's, or look at Tennessee's slide and see all of those OEMs. We were dang jealous, and still are dang jealous of all those OEMs. We didn't have an automotive O&M back when Governor Pat McCrory took over in 2013. We continued, obviously, to lose to other Southeast states, South Carolina being one of them, with better sites and financial packages, better than what we could offer in North Carolina. So a team from the Greensboro area, and what you all may or may not know is that Greensboro-Randolph, Greensboro is actually not in Randolph County. So those are 2 different cities and counties. So Greensboro is actually in Guilford County. Randolph is just to our south. Another interesting partnership that a city would partner with a county outside of its normal jurisdiction. But that's what it took in order to do this. So a group from our area went to the governor and said, look, we don't have an OEM. We want an OEM. How do we do that? We'll assemble the site, Governor, if you make sure when the time comes, we're able to compete in terms of incentives. And that agreement was struck. Ultimate goal was to attract a transformational manufacturing project. Yeah, we wanted automotive, and that often was reduced to automotive, but what we were looking for was a transformational manufacturing project. We formed a foundation called the Greensboro-Randolph Megasite Foundation. It was part of a local foundation in Greensboro, which is the Joseph M. Bryan Foundation. It's headed by Jim Melvin, and I put Mr. Greensboro in quotes there because he's the type of leader, local leader, that you want on your side in something like this. Hopefully you all have somebody like this. Jim is 80-something years old now. I don't know exactly for sure how old he is, but 80-something years old. Former mayor of Greensboro. Father was actually murdered in Greensboro when he was a kid. How many of you all think that you would stay in a place where your parent was murdered? I'd have left on the first opportunity to get out of there. He stayed committed to this community. The foundation's mission includes economic development, and he began a partnership with Randolph County. The first thing we did was engage with an engineering firm, and this is, I'm saying we, this was before I was in Greensboro, so I arrived in Greensboro in 2015. But the thought was, let's go find the best place we can find for a megasite. Let's do this the right way. So that engineering firm went out and said, you know, obviously we need to have a megasite. We need 1,000 plus acres. We need all that infrastructure on site or nearby. And what they found was this site that had US Highway 421 adjacent, which is an interstate quality highway and eventually will become an interstate highway. Norfolk Southern rail line adjacent. Duke Energy had a 525 kV line on site. Water and sewer would be coming from Greensboro. It's very nearby. We don't quite have to run it 36 miles. Man, I thought we had challenges. 36 miles of sewer run is a challenge. Piedmont Natural Gas nearby, and then fiber communications adjacent. Here's the rub. There were 90-some parcels to assemble and 70-some owners. Most communities would run away kicking and screaming, right? The easy megasite assembly, and I say the easy, and we're all human beings. We're like electrons. We go on the easiest route. Most megasites are, hey, there's a farm out here, a couple of farmers, 1,000, 2,000 acres, they're ready to get out of the business. There's our megasite. Problem is now you're so far away from some of that infrastructure that you've got some challenges. We had a massive, massive misstep to start. We went out there and had a real estate broker go out and start telling everybody, here's your offer on your property, and if you don't take this, we're going to take it by eminent domain. Really good start. Everybody got fired up. Everybody got fired up. We almost lost it just from the very beginning. To recover from that, you see the next bullet point. We went back out to everybody and said, we'll give you 2.5 times the tax value on your property. How many people today would sell your house for 2.5 times your tax value? I'm out. I'm out. I'll go find something else. 2.5 times the tax value. That's what happened. So Randolph County purchased the first parcel in April of 2015. The Greensboro-Randolph Megasite Foundation went soon thereafter. And soon we became what I called in 2015 when I arrived, looked at it, I said, we've got a maybe site. It's not a mega site, we got a maybe site. Why? We had so much due diligence to do. I mean, we're buying property and we're assembling all these 90-some parcels and we're having to do all of those phase ones and we're just having to make sure that everything is put in place. And soon, quite frankly, we ran out of money. And so, I mean, it's amazing how similar these stories are, right? So Tennessee runs out of money and the state comes to the rescue. We ran out of money and the North Carolina Railroad came to the rescue. And very similar in that it's a private company with one shareholder, the state of North Carolina, with economic development in their mission. And they became a partner soon thereafter in land purchases and due diligence, and by the mid-2016, we had 1,500 acres. And then we began marketing then in earnest. Once we became more than just a maybe site and really felt like we had a mega site, then we go off and start marketing. And along comes Project New World, which I know you all, many in this room, competed on this. It began with a visit to JLL offices in Chicago in the summer of 2017. We thought everybody knew about our site. We walked in and they said, what are you talking about? You've got a mega site? Yeah, all those mailings and all those emails and everything that we've done, you don't know about our mega site? Nope. And oh, by the way, we've got a project that we just signed up. It's called Project New World. You'll get an RFP very, very soon. So we did. We responded. We still didn't get a visit when they came. First visit when they came, they saw other mega sites in North Carolina and left on an airplane and went away. And my friends at EDPNC called and said, hey, they were here. They didn't want to see your site. And I said, why? And they said, we don't know. So I made up a reason to go to Chicago. I decided that I was going to go see the consultants again, but I didn't want them to know that I was panicked, because I was. Oh my gosh, here's this great opportunity, and I'm panicked that why did you not see my site? So off I went, rented a hotel room across from their offices, said I'm going to be in Chicago seeing a few other people. You know, I'd just love to stop by. If you have the opportunity, I can have 15 minutes. That'd be great. Walked into their office and I said, so, hey, y'all know about our site? We talked about it a few months ago. What don't we have? And they said, well, we're trying to get a box of these dimensions on a site, and if we lay it out on your site, as you see, we can't get it there because you've got a few out parcels here, there, that are out, and I can't make it work on your site. I said, okay, well, I mean, we've been talking to all these owners for so long. What do I need to do? How long do I have to get those under control? You got 72 hours. Raced out, raced to O'Hare, phone attached to my ear, guys, get those parcels under control. We did, thankfully, and got an opportunity to compete. We purchased 300 additional acres. Spoiler alert, they got more than 2.5 times their tax value. A little bit more than 2.5 times their tax value, because we had to have it. And what I tell people is we did 5 years worth of work in 5 months because we had to. We were chasing a site that had been in play for 10 years. I still have a hard time saying these words. Huntsville, Alabama, come out like vinegar. But they had been in play for 10 years. They had worked on their site for 10 years, and they were the leader. We were told that we were the site of choice by the North American team. Felt good about what was going on. And then they went dark over the holidays. Didn't hear from them. Scared to death. Worst day of my career, January 10th, 2018, when Mazda Toyota announces project location in Huntsville. It was January 9th when they called the day ahead of time and said, we're not coming. And I got to go tell Mr. Greensboro that the project that he'd been working on since 2013 and was so excited wasn't coming. Tough day, really tough day. But you all now know that I'm a Dookie, and Coach K has a saying, next play, right? Nothing we can do about that one. Next play, let's move on. And that's exactly what we did, and I have this real belief that you win or you learn. Don't necessarily lose, you win or you learn. How many folks in this room know Joe Max Higgins in Mississippi? Hands? Got a few. Joe Max's vehicle has a license plate that says 2EQ last. Anybody know what that means? You're second, you're last, right? If you ain't first, you're last, right? He loves Ricky Bobby, right? If you're not first, you're last. I don't necessarily believe that. It felt like that for a little bit, but I don't necessarily believe that. But what we believed is if we were in second, now we're in first, right? If we came in second for that project, now we're the best site. We have to be the best site. We immediately started getting interest. Phone calls, right? It had been vetted by the best. We were called. Mark, there were a number of projects out there that quite frankly were smaller or different or things that we didn't necessarily want. We kept our eyes on that prize. We went and did debriefing meetings. JLL and the client were nice enough to sit down with us and tell us what we did well, what we didn't do well. We went to Detroit and met with their consulting engineers. And we formed a list of needed improvements, right? So what they said to us, we started ticking off. Back to Apollo 13, right? Work the problem. If these are the problems, let's work those problems. Goal was to have everything on that site, be able to look a client in the eye and say, we can guarantee you we will have all of the infrastructure, everything you need, roadway improvements, water, sewer, everything within 12 to 18 months. And then we had built during that project, during Project New World, a project team that literally were on phone calls every morning as we worked through that project. Like I said, we did 5 years worth of work in 5 months, compressed timeline. We changed that to monthly, But those are the owners and local public officials, the state and local economic development team, the utility providers. Everybody was on a monthly visitation, either in person or on a call, to talk about what we were doing and how we were going to make those improvements. And then we had regular updates to JLL and others. We were checking off those improvements that were made and then communicating those to the people who told us we needed to make those. This became our Bible, if you will. These were the things we knew we needed to do on this site and we needed to check off, and we needed those statuses to go from in progress to complete. So this is at one point in time, but I wanted to make sure you all saw we wanted to make sure we were organizing the tasks that we needed to do. And I see people taking pictures, and I will share my email with you at the end if you all want me to email this to you. I'm happy to do it. But these are the things that we knew we had to do to make that site better and be able to win the next time we were through. So Project Darwin comes along. A June 2020 call from JLL. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I should put that date. That's actually 2021. Sorry, again, I told you I did this. Their first visit was during a tropical storm. I remember that because you try to take people on a visit to a megasite in a monsoon. And that's not a ton of fun, but you do what you need to do. But what we learned also is that starting in the lead is much different. Starting in the lead is much different than trying to catch up, because now you've got to prove it. And that's what those visits became. Those visits became prove it visits. Let's see if I can go back. I've seen this. You've communicated this to me on a regular basis. It's the reason why we're back. We wouldn't be back if you all had not been working the problem and doing the things that you needed. We wouldn't be back. Now, prove it. We also had a new partner in this. Obviously, Toyota Mazda was the first folks who looked at it. Now you have Prime Planet Energy and Solutions new to the site. That's a partnership between Toyota and Panasonic. So you had a new set of eyes on the site and on the community. So for those of us who wanted to say, hey, Toyota's back, they know us really well, we've done all this community stuff, we've been through this process before, we don't have to do that again. Nope, you've got to do it again. And even better this time. Even better, you've got a new set of eyes on your community. And now it's a different project. It's batteries rather than automotive assembly. And of course, all along, everybody in the community has always talked about a transformative project being automotive assembly. We weren't automotive assembly, we were batteries. More jobs, a bigger investment. So that's not hard to say, okay, well, we can transition to battery. That's good, we can do that. But different requirements in terms of utilities. Stu and my friends at Duke Energy can tell you that became a head scratcher, and we had to go back and figure out how we were going to make that work. And they did a great job making sure that would work. We had a green energy requirement, a high green energy requirement that challenged them and required them to do some creative thinking, and they did. It's a different layout on the site than we had ever imagined, and so you've got to make sure that you're able to do that on your site as well. We were in the queue for our environmental permits, both at the state and federal level. And those of you all who have dealt with the Corps of Engineers, you know how much they love change when you have a new what they consider as a new project. The negotiation between this really isn't a new project, folks. We've said automotive assembly all along. We're just assembling automotive batteries and not just automotive vehicles. Ultimately, we slowed down a little bit for that, but they did give us our permit, and we had an announcement on December 6th of 2021 that finally made all of this worthwhile. An awful lot of challenges and an awful lot of things to get done. And then I can't wait to get to y'all's questions. But I would say the big takeaways for us is that this took the three big P's. Preparation, and I talked to you about preparation. And there's a great John Wooden quote in honor of the NCAA tournament right here. When opportunity presents itself, it's too late to prepare. When opportunity presents itself, it's too late to be prepared. Be ready for it. So preparation was key. Partnerships. We all know that in this business, that you can't do this alone. My daughter the other day asked me, Daddy, what do you really do for a living? Like, what is it? I mean, the phone's always on your ear. You're in front of a Zoom call. What is it that you actually do? You just sit in meetings all day. And it occurred to me, I said, well, you know what I really do? I do puzzles all day. She looked at me funny. I said, I do puzzles all day. Every project requires a different team to be assembled, different resources, different things to make it work. And I said, that's my job, is to help assemble all of those puzzle pieces on a daily basis. So I put puzzles together, and partnerships are that puzzle. Partnerships are that puzzle. And then perseverance. You know, there are a lot of times, and I can tell you, 2013 to 2022, where you get beat up. You get beat up by folks in your community that walk up and go, why are you wasting your time on this Megasite thing? It's never going to happen. The media can do the same thing and say, you know, we're not seeing the results of what we thought we would see with the Megasite. And so we think it might be time for y'all to think about another tactic. You know, there were a lot of times in this process when people wanted us to chop up the site, right? Somebody needs 300 acres, somebody needs 400 acres, somebody needs 500 acres, and you've got 1,825 acres sitting out there. And so why don't we just start carving this thing up? The beauty of this site, and I think the beauty of what you heard in Tennessee, is they had one owner at the time, the state of Tennessee, who was going to be patient with that. It's not necessarily private money, it's state that can be patient. We had a Megasite Foundation who wanted something transformational here, North Carolina Railroad and Randolph County, who all had an agreement in place that they would have to agree, all three of them would have to agree unanimously as to what went on that site, and were patient with it as well to make sure that we got ultimately what we wanted. And so we were able to set that big goal and stick to it. And at the end of the day, it finally arrived on, like I said, December 6th, 2021. And so I hope my video is going to work. I think I have to click it one more time. So this one is our video. Oops, gotta go back. Can you play it back there? You got it? Thank you.
Today we are opening another important chapter in North Carolina's economic story. From the Wright brothers' first flight to life-saving medicines at the Research Triangle Park, we have been a state of firsts, partnering with industries to develop new ideas that really do change people's lives. Good things come to those who wait. And today we announce that Toyota will invest $1.29 billion for its first automobile battery manufacturing plant right here in the Greensboro-Randolph Megasite in the greatest state of North Carolina.
I'm excited to officially announce, on behalf of not only Toyota Motor North America, but Toyota Motor Corporation globally, we will be building our brand new, very first battery manufacturing plant in the U.S. right here in Randolph County in the great state of North Carolina. Now, production will begin in 2025 with the aim of delivering 1.2 million battery packs per year, and that's just the beginning.
4 years ago, we came away disappointed. Yet, Toyota sat down and talked with us after that happened. And a lot of things that have taken place since then till now resulted in now taking place.
The North Carolina story is one of success, but it's one of collaboration, it's one of bipartisanship, it's one of working across this entire great state.
We really thought about three things. The first was partnership. We recognized that only by working with others could we achieve this audacious goal. We also recognized that it wasn't about making a buck or creating an industrial park. It was about driving a transformation. And finally, this is a competitive business, and getting this site to where it is was very much about creating a competitive advantage for our state.
There are a lot of fingerprints on this project, and I want to thank Toyota for entrusting us with this very important project. We appreciate the faith in the Greensboro-Randolph Megasite and our ability to deliver. We won't let you down. This was not an overnight success. It took planning and leaders who were willing to take a calculated risk. Today's announcement proved that the city's targeted investments in water and sewer have paid off. We planned for this announcement years ago, and that was said earlier, we were confident that it was only when, not if.
So I am super excited to be here in Randolph County and so close to Greensboro. One of the reasons why we chose this site is because we were so attracted by the richness of the employment pool, by the offerings in the Greensboro area, by the people, and just by the amenities that surround this site. Because when we locate a plant, it's more than just the actual site, it's the community.
This is a great day for Randolph County and for Piedmont Triad area and all of North Carolina. And it bodes well for our future. I think we couldn't have picked a better partner, both in terms of ownership of the site and the best partner for a client that we could have going forward.
And the one thing that's really exciting about this project, it's of the future, is you heard from Toyota today. They are planning big for the future.
This was our motto throughout our project was, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Jim Melvin came up with that, and so it was a great opportunity to be able to take an awful lot of shots with this project, and finally we scored. You know, the one thing that I didn't put in my presentation, and that my friends in Tennessee put in theirs, and quite frankly it's a little surprising, we didn't get a lot of questions about workforce during this project. The company had really done their own research, and at the end of the first project, which was Project New World, we asked, well, what about workforce? You came and you visited for one day and you met with local employers, and we never heard anything more about it. They said we were absolutely convinced that we could find the workforce that we needed in your community. And so that was one thing, thankfully, at least with Toyota and their partners, we were able to check off that we didn't have to, that wasn't our challenge. There were a lot of challenges, as you saw, but thankfully that wasn't one of the challenges that we had to do. All right, I don't know that I went my full 30 minutes, so please tell my mother I was under time. And as I tell my own staff when we do events like this, nobody ever complained when you got out a little early. They'll complain when you get out late, but nobody ever complained when you got out a little bit early. So maybe we can glide into the weekend a little bit early. But this is, I think, what I think is going to be the best part of this part of the presentation is us sitting down and answering questions and getting y'all's thoughts in terms of the conversation. So James, I'll turn it over to you. And
we could take his logo off and put ours back down.
That's fine. That's fine. It's done.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to start with an apology to Mark. I've known this man for 20 plus years, but I've only call him Herbison. And with everything going on in my head, logistically, I was like,
It's the alcohol.
froze.
It's the alcohol.
Having to formally introduce him. Having been down this path in the past and been a runner-up for projects, it's hard on communities and community leadership when they get, your elected officials have already been brought into the process, and then you lose it. Somebody else is the winner. Talk about political will, how you guys kept. I know your story about people wanted to kill the site. Probably with a lot of that. So talk a little bit about the political will it took to keep these things going. Maybe start with Kyle.
We hadn't heard Kyle's voice yet.
So, say that again?
I said we hadn't heard your voice
It's ready.
yet.
All right. So I've been at the Jackson Chamber in Jackson, Tennessee for over 12 years now. When I started, the Megasite, the state had owned it for about a year. And I joined a team, and about half of my time was spent working on the Megasite. And y'all heard us mention earlier, we hired Buzz Knupp to help us with that. Paul Latour, Governor Phil Bredesen, Matt Kisber, who was the Commissioner of Tennessee Department of Economic Development. One of the things I want to make sure we do is this was built upon a team, but that team just kept changing year after year after year. To be honest with you, after about 4 years working on the project myself, it was like wading through molasses. There were so many ups and downs, and the only reason that project that we were able to locate Ford is because the team kept changing. I was involved, I've been involved for 12 years, but there were different partners all along the way. When Mark came on board, it really, he came at a very fortuitous time, because if he had not been there, I'm not sure we'd have located this project. And I want to give Mark a lot of credit. I have a staff of 11 people. I don't know how many you've got, Brent. He's got 2. And he located the project that is the largest in the state of Tennessee history, but it was all about teamwork. Memphis Chamber, the Jackson Chamber, Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, TVA, we all worked together. If one of those partners was not in the mix, was not on the team, we would not have won. The political piece of it just kept changing year after year after year. Obviously, through elections, you have, and y'all know that when folks get elected to office, whether it be a mayor, state senator, a governor, or someone else, a lot of those folks all think they know economic development better than we do. And so there's an education process. And over a dozen years, that just kept changing. But it only worked because everyone kept pushing, kept their eye on the prize. And I know in your slide you talked about perseverance, Mark did too, but that's it. It's just persevering through that, knowing that your team members are going to change, and keeping your eye on that goal.
How did you guys, so I know the governor tried to kill it. How did you stop that process from happening?
We coined a phrase called Megasite fatigue. Everybody got Megasite fatigue. It had been going on for years and years. For me, after they came out in early 2020 and said that they were not going to move forward with the sewer, because that was always the issue. It's risky to build a 36-mile, sewer system. A lot of things can go wrong. Timing can be off, and so we got even more aggressive in trying to get things done. We approached the state about doing a more regional concept on the infrastructure. We just kept pushing. But quite frankly, the project is what made it all happen. Had this project not happened, we may not have a Megasite, after this year's election. But fortuitously, it all came together and was perfect timing, because this team he talked about, we'd all been together for pretty much 8-9 years, the same team, as far as Chase and Haynes, the guy that ran it from the state. We'd worked with him for years. Kyle and his team, the Memphis Chamber team. So when we first started showing that site in 2010 and 11, we were not good at it. We did not do a good job. We fumbled around all over the city, but we really perfected showing that site and how to get them there, what to show them, the routes to take, the places to let them eat. Everything it took a long time. TVA's, role, the Chamber's role. So it was good we had that time, and thank God we didn't land a lot of those other projects we really stayed up crying about when we didn't land them. So.
Brent?
Your original question is, what did you do to keep people on task as you had losses, right? Because you win or you learn. And so shortly after the Toyota Mazda project didn't locate, obviously we did the debrief with JLL and the client, but we had our annual meeting, and so my annual meeting was looking like it was going to be more of a funeral than anything.
Brent.
For Brent, well, could have been for Brent, yeah. And so we asked Meredith O'Connor from JLL to come and talk about the project, and she was as upbeat as she possibly could be. I mean, I'm paid to be upbeat. So everybody knows I'm going to be up there saying, hey, we got to keep going. This is going to be great. We're going to get there. But for her to come in and her quote was, keep the champagne on ice, because it's going to happen. You've got a great site. It will happen. Keep working towards it. And that really fired the community up. And, you all saw it. The very last person who spoke in there was Jim Melvin. He's Mr. Greensboro. And Jim is just a force of nature, right? He was the one who wanted to do this and kept everybody moving. I mean, we had our own internal celebration Wednesday evening, and he got to the microphone and just admitted to everybody finally, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I knew that this community needed it. We lost 90,000 jobs, mainly to NAFTA. We had to have somewhat of a moonshot, and this was for me our moonshot. And thankfully, we were able to assemble a team who knew what they were doing. After Jim just kind of forced it and said, "This is what we're going to do."
Yeah. Talk about the days after the announcement. Everybody knows you go on a big vacation, you take a month off, a little sabbatical. Talk about what really happens, either the day of the announcement or immediately after. Anyone y'all?
Well, for me, I remember being at the announcement. And it was December 6th, right? So it was right before the holidays. And somebody walked up to me and said, "Hey, congratulations, you finally did it. You're going to get a chance to go on the holidays and have some fun and relax." And all I could think of was, if you only knew what was behind this. Because then we had the boom announcement at the Piedmont Trout International Airport, which was another 6 weeks away. So we were in the throes of that project as well. So, and as we know, everybody knows we're in a "what have you done for me lately" business, right? So, that was great, but what's next?
You also got to deliver on the promise.
Yeah, well, and that's that's where we are now, and I know that's where you all are as well. Is everything that was promised has to now be delivered, because ultimately that's going to be your community's biggest prize, biggest existing employer. We know that when new prospects come, who do they want to see? They want to see existing employers. They want to get in that room and find out, how were you treated? What's the labor force like here? Are promises delivered on? And we want to make sure that when they get in that room and we're not in there, that those answers are going to be, there's no regrets in our decision. We love where we are. They've delivered on every promise.
So for us, the announcement was September 28th. And I think we got to celebrate, and not even really that hard, for one day, because it's like the dog catching the school bus. It's like, all right, you've got it now. And it's been every single day. There are different things that we have the opportunity to work with. I was going to say deal with, but no, we have this opportunity. And for us at our chamber, it has totally transformed what our staff does. I've had to realign. I've always had a chief economic development officer on our team. Now I've got a chief community engagement officer. Ryan's job is to handle everything that's looking at Jackson outside of pure industrial type development. Because for the first time, our community has moved from getting inquiries about warehouse, distribution, industrial, jumping up ahead to where we now have asset managers calling us. Jackson's never been a market where an asset manager is going to call and say, "Hey, we've got capital. Jackson looks like a great place to get an ROI because of the Ford project and other things that you guys are doing." So now we're seeing large residential developers from throughout the South looking at Jackson. We're looking at companies that would stand up industrial buildings from outside of our market looking at the community. So it's just really changed everything we do. Mark, like we talk about 2 or 3 times a week, and just the phone calls that you get and the local things that you have to deal with is different.
Well, I mean, it's completely, I never could imagine one project changing my job description this much. It's been incredible. I worked at the Nashville and Memphis chambers for years, and so we worked a lot of deals, and you go to the next deal and the next deal. But Ford's like a country. They've got Ford Talent, and they're developing a high school curriculum for all of West Tennessee, where you can graduate from high school with dual enrollment and go to work there. They've got Ford Land, which is their property division, helping the communities figure out how to develop and, kind of what their standards are and what they would recommend any ways they can. They've got the Ford Foundation that's coming in and redoing the Douglas Community Center. I mean, they're doing things I've never seen a company do before. And so it's really changed. Since the day they called last February of 2021, it's all consuming. I've never seen anything like it. We've got, Haywood County, where this is locating, is a county that has 17,000 people in it. The 3 counties I represent, which are suburbs of Memphis, have 3,200 manufacturing jobs in all 3 counties. This is going to be 6,000 overnight, pretty much.
Do you see talent coming in to take these jobs, into
Some.
Tennessee to take these jobs?
Well, I do, because see, you were part of the problem in Tennessee for us. Because, yeah, they set up Clarksville really well, and for years Clarksville got LG Chem and Hemlock and Facebook and Google and this and that, and every month it would be, mayors, because I work for a board of 6 mayors, what's going on in Clarksville? Well, it was because James and Mike Evans set it up so well and bought all this property and developed it, and it's right next to Mecca, Nashville, which was where everybody wants to go, and so for a long time it was, and there's been huge in-migration where we've seen out-migration in our area. So we've not seen a lot of new houses built. We could have used houses before for it, and that's what Kyle and I are focused on now, building houses and public utilities.
Well, we sat in a lot of kitchen tables over the years trying to convince those folks to sell the property, and then having, a county and a city willing to put the dollars on the table. And that's one thing I talked with you about on the phone, but not everybody's going to have the state come in and buy the property and develop it. Not everybody's going to have necessarily the cash at the local level to do it on their own. So what recommendations do you have for us on whether it's a mega, and not every mega site is a mega deal. You will have, but it's a 500-acre parcel of property or a 200-acre parcel of property. But what recommendations do you have for our economic development family on convincing leadership to step in and make those investments, whether it's the land, it's the infrastructure, even the option agreements?
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have if you don't have the ability to buy the property, and we didn't at the beginning, there were a lot of option agreements put in place to get to that 1,500 acres. And like I said, we had the ability to pay 2.5 times tax value, or the promise to pay 2.5 times tax value, and that led to a lot of options. But that's a good way of doing it without having to have all the cash up front in order to buy the property. But then also you got to make sure you save some money back, and that's where we kind of started to fall into a little bit of a trap. Is you got to do all the due diligence on all those properties as well. And so you've got to have a balance in there of what your funds might be used for.
Was your site certified?
Our site was certified by KPMG. It was. We had them come in and look. Yeah, all that essentially is a dry run of a big project. And so there are various folks out there who can do that, even some engineering firms that can do some of
Well,
that
we've
stuff.
gotten out of the site certification business, but what I learned when we went through it with McCallum Sweeney is it's the process. And it also tests the local will to put money on the table, skin in the game, to make sure this is going to actually happen. I think that was, when I had to do it, that was the value we took away from it.
Well, that's what we do. I mean, we have 7 other industrial parks in the 3 counties that we're developing, and we leverage the Tennessee has a really good program called PEP, Property Evaluation Program, and in order to get state grants, which they're very aggressive now. I mean, they're going up to $1 million per grant per site, and TVA has a really good grant program. So we've leveraged those dollars, but we use pilot funds, payment in lieu of tax funds from old deals to buy new property. So we kind of reinvest with revenues from older projects, and sometimes we get the city and county to just put money in. We had one city put up $1.6 million last year to buy 70 acres, to add to a park. So, but we've kind of got a whole process of developing industrial parks, both local level and then TVA and state funding as well.
Yeah, we're extremely lucky in Jackson, and we talked about the Ford project only happened because of a team. Our team in Jackson works together extremely well, and when I know a lot of you may be living in rural communities and you've got leadership that may think, hey, there's 200 acres out there, that's a great industrial site. Well, it's not a great industrial site unless it's got the infrastructure and everything else around it that you need. I guess the maturity level of the teamwork that we've got in our community, they understand that. So with Jackson Energy Authority, who is a customer of TVA, we're able to sit and just, we go through GIS maps and look at the sites that we need to acquire next. Our inventory of available industrial sites was going to take us through the next 5 to 7 years. With the Ford project and the suppliers that are coming, that's probably another 18 to 24 months. So now we're spending a lot of time looking at where our next industrial parks are. So we're not starting from ground zero because of the understanding of economic development in our community, but it's not a process where we're going to knock those down in 3 to 6 months. It's going to take a little while to make sure that those will fit in the grand scheme of what the growth is going to dictate for us.
And you guys can step up to the mic at any point and ask questions. So looking back, is there anything you would have changed along the way? I mean, you got the W now.
Mm-hmm.
Are there pitfalls you would have avoided? What would you have changed along the way?
It was a miracle for us, James. I mean, it's just a miracle. It was quick. It went very quick. February, we announced it in September. I mean, it was a whirlwind. It's been a whirlwind since then. It all worked out really well for us. I mean, timing on everything, just even things like as small as the interstate being shut down by a wreck when you're going out to a meeting at a site. None of the things that could have happened didn't. I mean, everything went really, really well. The teamwork was exceptional. We'd all done this so many times together that we were prepared. We had to sell Memphis and Jackson. That was the sites in the middle of nowhere in a county with 17,000 people. Yeah. And so, but it's very close to a lot of people. So, I feel blessed that we got it. I just think it's a miracle, and I can't think of anything I would have really changed. It went really, really well. I mean, it was a team effort for years that came together. It's like a dream come true for me, for sure.
You can look at things that you might change, but you go back and if you change that might have been a learning point that made us better, because like Mark said, this project came along at the perfect time. If it had come before us 3 years earlier, we might not have won it.
Well, and we didn't, it wasn't Ford we had to sell. Ford had really been there for months. It was SK when they came in August that we really had to sell and spend a lot of time with and really, show them firsthand. This is the residential and everything. We spent a lot of time doing that, but it went really well. So.
I think most of us would say we'd like to change the losses, but to their point, I think the losses make you better. I mean, I think the Mazda Toyota project, I'm not sure that we could have delivered on what they needed back then. And so what that showed us was what it was going to take to actually win. So we got this win because of a loss. Mm-hmm. And you got an opportunity over a 5 or 6 month period to put people in the war room on a daily basis to work the project, who may or may not have ever been in a daily call war room in a big economic development project. And it got their juices flowing too. So you got even more buy-in from folks of, okay, they felt the loss, they felt the pain, they felt the energy and the desire to, hey, we've lost, but we really now we really want to win. And so, sometimes they're actually wins in disguise.
We had Chris come in from JLL 4 or 5 years ago to talk in the aftermath of them locating in Huntsville. Huntsville been down the same road.
That's right.
They'd been in play on deals.
That's right.
And they'd lose, and they'd figure out, all right, so what do we got to take care of? And you start clicking off those boxes, and eventually they got that site.
That's
where
right.
they won a big old
We
deal.
almost caught them. We
Yeah.
almost caught them, but couldn't quite get there.
Yeah. Do you guys have any questions? Oh, I knew I could count on you, Marty.
So probably more about the details on the mega sites. So Mark and Kyle, we talk about mega sites, 1,000 acres, 1,500. I saw the 4,100. Did you end up there because it was one owner, it was kind of all together, or was there a strategy around the 4,100? How did you get to that?
They just got as much as they possibly could is what they did. It ended up being 4,100 acres, and I think it was about 50 owners. It was a number of owners.
2 houses on the entire.
2 houses. I mean, it's always been either sorghum or corn or soybean or cotton. So.
And did that project start? I mean, the conceptuals that you show and what you know now. did it grow because it was 4,100 acres, or they really needed that from the beginning? Because sometimes, hey, they get there and then they say, well, why don't we do this?
No, that was bought in 2009 and 10 for around $40 million. And how the price got set is there was one farmer, and this is back when acreage was probably selling for $850 an acre for agricultural land, maybe $1,000, $1,200 at the most. He said, I will not sell for less than $10,000 an acre, and the county mayor said, you just set the price for everybody. So that's what they paid, $10,000 an acre. So, but that was the original acreage, was the 4,100, started at that.
And the size of that project was the same at the beginning as it is now, or did it
Well,
grow?
Ford is taking down 3,600 of the 41. We've got 500 acres left that we still have.
And then, Marty, I'm going to bring a seat up here for you. Just part of this conversation.
So I was going to ask you, I know, we've seen the developable box. We've heard that different acreages. It depends on kind of the shape of it. But what do you recall that, I know this is getting into the weeds, but do you remember how big the box was that you had to have when you went back to get more land?
It was 1,000 acres, and so I remember the initial RFP said we need 1,000 developable acres, and we could do that, except our developable acreage was rectangular, and what they were looking for was something that was more square. So the dimensions changed, and we were able to get that. But what I think was interesting, and the reason why they wanted square, in my opinion, is they didn't know what they were doing. Because we kept asking, can we see the site plan? Can we see the site plan? I mean, you see the layout on your side. Can we see the site plan? And finally, the consultant called and said, hey, you're going to, on these phone calls, you need to stop asking for the site plan because you're ticking them off. Because they don't have one yet. So they just know, in absence of a true site plan, what's the best thing? A blank sheet of paper. We want a square, 1,000 acres, blank sheet of paper.
Okay.
So
and usually it seems like the battery plants are more square versus the OEMs are more rectangular. But yeah, that's good.
They wanted a square.
Yeah. Okay. So. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Come up. It's Crystal Murphys.
Talk about opposition, and so we've all experienced opposition when something is getting ready to be built. There's a company, there's a sewer line getting ready to be built, there's opposition. But what I found interesting about the Greensboro-Randolph Megasite was I was driving through the region and I saw signs on trees with a red circle and a slash through it, and it said Megasite, no Megasite.
That's one or two that I missed. I'm sorry.
I'm sure you tried to take them down. But I remember when I saw that, I thought, well, now, there's not actually anything being done on the site. There was opposition to the assemblage of acreage for sites. So just talk about the different types of opposition you both faced.
I don't know. Did y'all have opposition?
Yeah.
You did? Yeah. Okay.
Well,
good. It wasn't just us. Good.
Go ahead. I mean, I would say used to be a sign out hanging off one of the interstate bridges that said "Stop Industrial Sprawl" right next to the Megasite. And there's no industry within 15 miles of this place. So, but yeah, I mean, we had opposition originally from environmental groups that didn't want us, and we didn't discharge into the Hatchie River. And now it's more of, we've had some opposition at the Nashville level on UAW that, these deals are negotiated by administrations, not legislatures. And then legislatures come back in and get started, and they've gotten started. And so but we're okay on that. But there really hasn't been a lot of local opposition to this because we've been waiting so long for this. And we've seen such incredible growth in Middle Tennessee. Nashville is like Austin. It is off the chain. James knows. He saw it happen. But so we've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and now I think pretty much everybody's glad about it. So.
Pretty much been actually the opposite of that a little bit. In our jobs, you all get this. It's, we get paid to do this. Mark and I don't stand up and take credit, but yet we've got a whole lot of people in West Tennessee that had zero to do with the project. Some of them might have been against the Megasite years ago, but they're sure standing up taking credit for it now.
So we had some, and Christoph and I kind of jokingly said I missed two signs. If they're on public property, they're coming down. But a real small opposition around the site, neighbors to the site. And in absence of a true plan of what was going to happen there, everybody, I guess it's just human nature that we go to the worst possible scenario, right? And They just didn't want to live around smokestacks billowing everything into the air, blah, blah, blah. We had one county commissioner who was loyal to that opposition, a small opposition group. The rest of the county was, Randolph County needs these jobs. And you all are probably not familiar with our tier system in North Carolina. They're, teetering between a, tier 1 and tier 2 county, which means they're close to, the bottom tier of our state. They need these jobs. And to his credit, to this commissioner's credit, he realized what a great neighbor Toyota was going to be. I mean, once you finally get to the project and you get to look those folks in the eyeballs and understand what's going to happen, and that they're not interested in people being upset with their facility anyway. So they're going to make sure that the buffer's there. They're going to make sure that lights are kept to a minimum. They're going to make sure that noise is kept to a minimum. They're going to be there, and they're going to have a neighborhood group that they work with. And at the end of the day, he voted for it. Even having been all those years loyal to the opposition, he said, this is going to be the best thing that's going to happen on this site, is Toyota.
So when the small minority are the squeaky wheel, it's very easy for politicians to say, you know what, let's just get out. Because the majority of folks that support it are never going to speak up. Our mega site in Clarksville, we had been negotiating with Hemlock Semiconductor for well over a year. The VW search came up, and I think we could have won that deal, but we were already so far along with Hemlock, and we had to let them know that. They took us out of the mix. But our option agreement on the property was running out in August, and we were going to have a deal till probably year end. 21 county commissioners. Think about having to deal with 21 county commissioners. And with permission from the company, we sat down with every single one of them and gave them as much detail as we could, the path that we've been down, the number of prospects we saw. One county commissioner out of them did not vote for it, but he didn't say anything when it came to a vote. Because we had to get the bonds approved to buy the property and actually take hold of it, or we were going to lose the property altogether. But it's ongoing education of our elected officials that I think over a 7-year period that we stayed with it. And once a year we'd do a deep dive, bringing folks in like this. Another half of the year we would take them to a community, a benchmark visit, to see what could be on what we were trying to pursue. So I think for us, that was a huge thing. It's just making sure that our elected officials were on board the entire time, being very transparent with them when the time was right, and allowed us to, if we hadn't had that land, we wouldn't have had the deal. I think you were first.
I heard you talk earlier about the challenges with infrastructure and residential and housing, single-family apartments. Did any local folks step up and provide any support on the residential side?
In terms of development?
Yeah.
We've seen a tremendous amount in my 3 counties of both local and national residential developers come in. I was really shocked at how quickly it happened. I mean, just very quickly, and I know Kyle's seen it too. We've got 3 new hotels coming up in Haywood County, which is where the megasite is located.
But they're probably coming because it's there or soon to be there, but there was not any incentive for them, correct?
No, there's not. Now, we're looking at, doing some streamlining for developers and things and trying to help, but we're not going to do tax incentives or things like that.
Okay. Warren knows why I'm asking this. I've been asking Warren for a few years about us looking at some opportunity, because to me, residential is what brought the co-ops together 40 years ago, and so they're an economic impact. So I'd love to see us think about residential going forward.
I never thought I'd be focused on residential development, but we sure are now.
Well, it matters because it's the ongoing, process. So thank you.
What's happened to us in West Tennessee is that our housing market, up until about a year ago, new home construction, probably about $120, $140 a square foot. Now that has escalated to $180, $200, $220 a square foot. Those developers from Nashville and other regions couldn't come to Jackson and West Tennessee and make money. Their ROI was not there. Our local developers, just in our town, in Jackson, we had about 20 builders prior to the recession. The recession knocked out about 12 of those. So really, you've got about 8 folks in our community that are trying to build homes. So that's changed now. You've got the regional and national residential construction companies looking at Jackson. We've got, I think we just approved 500 new apartment units, and there's another 1,000 that should go before the Planning Commission in the next few months.
Mark, you said you're building a 36-mile sewer line in the Mississippi River. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like that. Is that being built by a county? Is that who's going to own and maintain? And a wastewater treatment plant?
The state is building both the wastewater treatment and water processing facilities, and will have a third-party vendor that will operate that and maintain it.
Privatized?
Huh?
Privatized?
Yeah.
And it is
very unique.
Is the Ford plant the only customer of that facility?
Well, we did a special session of the legislature last October or November, and part of that legislation, they are dedicating the water and the sewer to Ford and its subsidiaries. So SK Ford, there's an estimate of 6 to 10 big suppliers on the site. And then there's another big heavy user that's not automotive that's looking at the other 500-acre parcel that would be a really heavy sewer user that would have that. But the sewer and water infrastructure are just for the industries on the site.
Wow. Okay, thanks.
Jim Melvin used to ask me on a regular basis when some of these issues would come up, these opportunities would come up, is this something that money can't fix? Mm-hmm. And I'd say no. He said, well, then I'm going to really worry when we have an issue that money can't fix. Yeah. Because if you got a big project like this, the resources are going to be there, right? And that sounds outrageous that you're going to run a 36 miles of sewer. But that project and all of the return that the state and locals are going to get, that's going to wind up being a bargain.
Just getting the easements was a 4-year process. I mean, agonizing process.
Yeah.
So,
Other questions? Gentlemen, I'm grateful for your friendship, and thank you for coming to South Carolina to share your story. Help me thank them.